Hello everyone. Today what we're going to be talking about is gluing your sections of your book. Before we do that, I want to talk to you about what you should see at this table. So you should see some bottles of glue. Elmer's glue is what we're going to use. There should also be a can of paintbrushes sitting in water. I'll explain that in a second. You'll most likely need a paper towel. Come on, light. You're going to need a paper towel for this. You'll also need a piece of cardstock. It's this pink paper that I have, pink or green, whichever one's at the table. And you'll need some wax paper. And I'll go into why we need these things. So here's my book. I'm going to get started on gluing sections. And remember, I want you to not do anything to whichever page is going to be your title page. So again, this is going to be something we do together. Just leave it alone. Now I know I'm going to cut out this area, so I'm actually going to save these next couple pages for what I want to do. And so this is actually, these guys right here are my first section. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to start gluing these guys. Now what you're going to be doing is gluing 2 pages together. I'm going to get my cardstock. I'm going to put it underneath the page I'm gluing, so that way it doesn't get too messy. I'm going to pick one of the paintbrushes, and I'm going to dry it off. Now we're going to use the paintbrush to smear and move all of that glue around. So you want to make sure your paintbrush isn't wet. If it's wet, the glue won't work as well. It'll not stick, and that's not what you want to do. So I have my glue. I'm just going to kind of do a zigzag. And what I want you to notice is I'm not using too much. Remember, you can always add more glue, but if you put too much glue in the beginning, it'll like eke out and smear all over the rest of your book. So I'm just kind of brushing it with the paintbrush. And remember, there's no rush. This glue takes a little while to dry. What you want to really pay attention to are the edges. If the edges don't get glue, they're going to like flip open, they'll curl, and that will start to bother you as you start working into your sections for your project. So you really just want to make sure you go around with the paintbrush and just kind of coat it all over. Make sure there's no weird lumps. Make sure you get every edge. And I can tell, I have a little dry spot right there, so I'm just going to put a little bit of glue, a little bit, and smear it back over there. So I'll put my paintbrush back in the water, so that way it doesn't harden. I'm going to get that second page and lay it over. Now this is going to be not so much tricky as more just kind of figuring out how these pages are going to glue together. So you just kind of start adding it together like this. This is where the wax paper will start to come in. You'll need one sheet behind and in front of that page you glued. Now some people like to use credit cards or pieces of cardboard just to smooth out the wrinkles, that way they don't have anything on there. You can use either one. You just want to get these pages glued together and really just get the edges. So I'm going to actually cut some of this wax paper in half, so that way I can put one on one side and one on the other. So now what the wax paper is doing is it's making sure that if I get some glue coming off the edges, kind of, let's say you have some coming out, it won't glue to the rest of the book. You don't really want that to happen. That's not going to be fun for you. And that's why we use the paintbrushes. We don't want it to get we don't want it to glue to the wax paper as well. You shouldn't be using too much. So now I'm going to switch over to my other side. So here's my 2. And I'm going to get some glue, this one. Again, just some zigzags. Don't try to do a puddle. I'm going to get my paintbrush again from that cup of water, and I'm going to dry it. So that way it doesn't dilute my glue. And then I'll just start. Now what will happen is if you put a lot of glue, if you're like, well, I'll just put a lot of glue and then I'll just mix it up with a paintbrush, I should be fine. Paper is very delicate, especially these papers in these novels. So if you have a lot of glue, your pages will want to wrinkle very, very quickly. So you have to be careful. If you just do what I did, it'll happen, but not as bad. And I see that I have some spots that I didn't get enough glue in, so I'm just going to put a couple little dabs for that corner, a little bit in this corner. Again, I'm not putting a lot of glue. I just really want to get those edges. Okay, I'm putting my brush back in the water, and now I'm going to close this page over. Very intriguing, I know. It's mind-boggling. Okay, so some wax paper. And to be on the safe side, I'll also put wax paper here, just in case. I don't want it to glue together, because then you lose a section and that will bug you. Now, your first instinct is to just go ahead and start gluing all of them. You've watched this demo. You get it. This isn't rocket science. It's not going to be too hard to figure out. You're just gluing 2 pages of the 4 together. But I want to caution you, there are tips and tricks. If you try to glue all of them together at once, let's say you're just going through and just gluing like a mad person, a couple things can happen that you want to be careful of. So you see my pages are already kind of wrinkling. When you go to close your book, this should write itself. But I want to do another section because I'm an impatient student and I want to get this project on the road. So I'm just going to kind of try to fix those as best I can. Don't do this next section. What you want to do is, if you did your first section, here's my first section of my book, I'm going to at least skip one of these and do this one. The reason why, or I might even skip a few and do this section. You don't want to do sections that are too close together because you'll get more wrinkles. The pressure of the book might start affecting it more. You want to kind of just jump to another section and work back and forth. You've already sectioned off your books. You should be fine. You shouldn't have to worry about this. So, I'm going to start on this one. So here is my section I worked on right here in the front. I'm skipping these guys and starting this next section. Again, if you go right after another, you might get more wrinkles. It might start warping. It's simply because the pages are getting super wet really close together. If you jump between sections, the other sections kind of act as a dryer. So that way, as you work, these guys aren't warping. They're perfectly fine. This one is the one that's being changed. So it won't have too much of an effect. And then, the next day you'll go back, you'll do the other ones. You could probably get 3 to 4 sections done in a class period, depending on if you get your wax paper ready, if you do all that type of stuff. So, again, here's my 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. These 2 will be glued together. And I'll have wax paper on this side, wax paper in between the 2, and wax paper in the back. So this isn't hard to do. This isn't too complicated. It's just you want to make sure that you're not doing them right away. So I'm going to close my book. I'm going to have it let to dry. And what I'm going to do, let's see if my camera can pick this up, is I'm just going to check. Remember I had those weird wrinkles in my book? So I'm just going to kind of squeeze it around. I'll flip it this way. Come on, there we go. I'm just going to make sure that nothing too crazy is happening. When I go to put this away, because I've been working on this front section and I'm going to probably do one of these middle sections in here, I'm going to put it away this way. The reason why is because the back of the book still has a lot of weight, and all of these pages in the back, they're not altered, there's no glue on them, so they're just going to press down on the ones we just did. So I would work on some sections that are near the front, but kind of far away from each other. When I go to put it away, the sections I didn't work on, those will be the ones pressing down. The next day, I'll probably come back, work on sections from back here, a couple from different spots, and then when I put away the upside down. It's kind of like you're flipping a pancake. You want the weight to help your pages glue together, and you want to help them not warp. So see, they're kind of fixing themselves now that the book is closing. So you see I kind of have those little wrinkles going on. And that's okay. It's going to add imperfections, and we can always cover them with the design that we're going to do. So let me put my other piece of wax paper there. So that way it doesn't glue on. And now what I'm going to do is, just like before, every time we work on our stuff, we're going to take photos. Yay, iPhone. So I have my book, and I'm just going to kind of do a little photo of what I did today. So I have my 2 pages, and I'll show the wax paper to show I blocked it. And I'll show, yeah, that was a pretty good one. One more, just in case, get a far away view. So now this photo, where is this photo going to go? Is it going to stay trapped in my phone? No! If you answered no, you are correct. If you know where it's going to go, you're even quicker than I thought. It's going on your Padlet, the Padlet you already created. So, I'm starting to glue. This isn't too crazy. I know my sections. I'm just working a little bit from the front, using the weight of the back to press them down. The next day I'll come back, do some from the back, use the front to press it down, and just keep working till all your sections are glued. Let's go over just things to think about. First things first, don't put too much glue. Too much glue will drive you crazy. It could potentially ruin the other pages of the book. You always want to use the paintbrush to smooth it out. Use the brush to spread the glue around. Yes. Keep using the brush. Remember to always dry it. That will drive you crazy. Yeah, make sure your brush is dry. Make sure to cover the edges of the paper. That's what this cardstock paper is all about. Don't work on sections that are near each other. No, never do that. They could potentially glue together, or what will most likely happen is they'll warp each other, meaning you'll have all these waves. You don't want to do that. Don't forget to leave space for the title. don't do anything to that first part. You're gluing 2 pages together and then the other 2. So something like this. Of the 4 pages, each section is 4 pages. The first 2 are glued together, the last 2 are glued together. This in-between part is where we're going to draw. That's the section. Put wax paper in between. Don't forget. Okay, I will check in with you guys and make sure that you don't have any questions or if you need any help. See you soon.